Years ago, poverty forced Daniel and Grace to make a decision no parent should ever face. They sold their newborn daughter, Eleanor, to a wealthy couple for money that barely kept them alive. 15 years later, a car stops outside their old wooden house, and from it steps a young woman who looks hauntingly familiar, holding the hands of her real parents. What happens next will break your heart. The memory of that day lived in the hollow of Daniel and Grace's ribs like a constant ache, not loud, but impossible to ignore. It had been rain heavy, the kind of afternoon when the sky seemed to press the air down until breath felt like a theft. Their one-room home leaked from the eaves. Their cupboards had become a library of emptiness. When the neighbor's child fell ill and the son's wages were late again, desperation arrived with the same ordinary footsteps as hunger. The baby they named Eleanor was only a week old. She had a soft, uneven cry, an unruly curl of hair, and palms the size of moth wings. Daniel had held her and let the warmth of that fragile life etch itself into him. Grace had swaddled her in scraps and hummed the lullaby her mother used to sing, a tune of stars and stubborn promises. Yet every promise came with the thinnest paper of reality below it. A landlord who would not wait, a debt collector with patience thinner than hunger, a mouth that needed an unending supply of bread. When the wealthy family from the city, the Bennets, came calling, they spoke in the comfortable voice of people who could make decisions without measuring the cost. They offered a tidy sum, an offer that in their small world shone like a lamp that could burn away the dark for years. Daniel and Grace heard the numbers as if from far away, muffled and incredulous. They argued with each other in whispers, then in looks that carried all the arguments they could not say. When it was done, Eleanor was wrapped in a clean blanket and placed into the arms of a woman whose jewelry made a quiet clink and who smiled with a sorrow that looked custom-made for farewell. "You will come and see her," the woman, Mrs. Bennet, promised, as if she could stitch time to their lives with sweet words. "We will write. We will send pictures." They left that day with a pouch of coins and a small brass lamp, a lamp that the Bennets said Daniel could keep. The lamp warmed his palm like a promise he could carry home. Daniel and Grace walked back into a silence that felt heavier than it had before. They knew, even then, that the sound their hearts were making was not regret yet, only the dull, naive hope that this sale would be the solution. Days piled into months. Letters came twice. A photograph of a baby in a lace bonnet. A short note that said she slept like an angel and was thriving. The brass lamp sat on the windowsill, catching light and never quite burning. The payments the Bennets had promised were irregular, then stopping altogether. Life, stubborn and laborious, resumed its dull work. Eleanor's lullaby returned to Grace sometimes when she stood at the well, but it was a memory, softened by distance, like a painting left in the sun. 15 years stretched and folded. The Bennet household in the city taught Eleanor Everything a child of privilege might learn, the patience of a gardener who tends his roses, the ability to ask for what she wanted and expected, the way corners of cloth could be folded into elegance. They named her Sophia, a name that meant wisdom, and they loved her the way people with means could show devotion, with lessons, with tutors, with trips to the museum and shoes that never gave blisters. They never told her the truth. They built a life for her that had no gap in it, a life that smelled of lemon oil and clean linen. Welcome to another heart-touching story. Before we begin, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Maybe New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. We'd love to know where our amazing viewers are joining us from. In the old neighborhood, Daniel and Grace aged in a different currency. Their hair threaded silver, their hands more calloused. Guilt had become another kind of hunger, one that pressed down on the chest and demanded confession. They slept on the edge of their memories, expecting sometimes at odd hours to hear the patter of small feet and then pulling the blanket tighter when it did not come. They had other children later, faces marked by need and love. But Eleanor's absence remained a plane that could not be erased. The day Eleanor, now Sophia, walked back into their lives, she came not as the child who had been sold, but as the woman who belonged to both worlds. She arrived on a spring morning when the roadside mustard flower was in tentative bloom, the city dust still clinging to the hems of her dress. Standing beside her were Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, older, dignified, and carrying the soft gravity of people who had lived with their own forms of regret. They held her hands like anchors. Daniel and Grace were at the doorway when the sounds came. The car, the polite laughter of guests who thought reverence for anyone was optional, the shuffle of polished shoes on gravel. Eleanor, Sophia, stepped forward, and for a second the past compressed into a sharp, inevitable point. Her eyes were the same dark, patient eyes Daniel remembered. There was a maturity about her smile that made Grace's breath stop halfway. Eleanor had brought with her the clean scent of soap and rain, but she carried something else as well, a steadiness that showed she had practiced being brave. "Dad, Mom," she said, the words stumbling from her like stones into a quiet pond. Daniel's fingers found Grace's without thinking. They felt older than they had been in years. "Eleanor," Daniel began, and the name tasted both foreign and true on his tongue. Sophia, because the Bennets had given her that name and she had grown into it. Looked at Mr. Bennet. "You said so much to them," she said softly. "You told them you would help." Mr. Bennet removed his hat and cleared his throat. He had the face of someone who had been taught that wealth could fix most things. "We did what we could," he said, "but money without truth is hollow. We thought we were doing what was best." Grace could not swallow. Her hands trembled, and a brittle laugh slipped from her like a cracked coin. "You took her," she said. The words were not a question. "You bought her and left us with nothing but a promise." Sophia's gaze flickered like a bird assessing the sky. "I was not only taken," she said, and there was no accusation in the voice, only a patient recounting. I was given. They gave me an education, a house, meals that never ran out. But I learned there are things money cannot purchase. Her voice softened. Love is not only in the giving, it is in knowing the history of the one you love. Silence wrapped itself around the four of them. The street beyond their doorway kept moving. Carts creaked. A child's shout cut through. A dog barked twice and then was gone. Inside, in that fragile room where the brass lamp had long lost its glow, the past and present collided. Grace wanted to collapse, to fall at Eleanor's, Sophia's feet and ask for forgiveness from the girl who was also the daughter whose absence had haunted her. She wanted to tell her how each night she had pressed her palms to an empty space on the blanket and whispered apologies into the dark. Eleanor stepped closer. She placed a small hand over Grace's, the gesture simple and profound. "Mom," she said, using the word that had once belonged to someone else's language, "you are my mother." The sentence cracked like glass and then filled the space with its sharp light. Daniel wept without sound, his shoulders shaking as if trying to shake off a burden he had carried for years. Tears slid down Grace's face, clean and fast, a rain that finally had somewhere to go. Mr. Bennet watched them with a sorrow that had no satisfaction in the currency of giving. "We wanted to protect her," he said quietly. "We thought we were doing right. For that, I am sorry. For the secrecy, for the silence. Truth would have been better. Courage would have been better." Sophia looked between the two couples, at the parents who had sold her and at the parents who had raised her, and in her face was not the triumph of a child returned, but the acceptance of a person who had grown to understand the complicated geography of love. "All of you learned something," she said. "The Bennets taught me how to read the sky and name the constellations. Daniel and Grace taught me that survival is not a crime. You both taught me sacrifice." Grace's laugh this time was a sob that turned into a smile. "Then teach me, Eleanor," she whispered. "Teach me how to be forgiven." Welcome to another heart-touching story. Before we begin, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Maybe New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. We'd love to know where our amazing viewers are joining us from. Eleanor stationed herself between the two families as if she were building a bridge. She spoke of small things. The book Mr. Bennet used to read to her at night, the way Mrs. Bennet would braid her hair before an exam, and of the emptier things, the nights she would look at the photo Mr. Bennet kept of her wrapped in lace and wonder why a picture could not tell the whole story. She told them she had always wondered about the roughness in a mother's calloused palm, and in that moment, Grace understood that her own hands could be a language. Eleanor recognized forgiveness when it came was not a sudden absolution. It was a slow, deliberate choosing. Daniel asked for it in a voice that sounded like a prayer. "Mrs. Bennet, accepted an apology that had to do less with wealth and more with honesty. Eleanor, Sophia, forgave because she chose to, because she had learned that to carry two sets of parents was to be richer in a way no coin could measure. They sat together for hours that day until the sun slid behind the farthest roofs and the sky turned the color of cooked beets. They talked, they argued, they reminisced, and they planned small things, visits, a shared meal once a month, a promise that no more secrets would be kept. Daniel showed Mr. Bennet the brass lamp. Mr. Bennet examined it with the musing of a man who had collected many things, but was still learning the right value of each. He promised to restore the house's leaky roof. The Bennets promised to help without pretension. When the Bennets left that evening, they went back to their city home with a new understanding of what charity required. Not distance, but honesty. Daniel and Grace had their daughter again, though nothing about the past could be erased. Eleanor walked between them, a living testament to both loss and care, and in her steps was written the possibility of repair. In the quiet after, Grace sat by the window with the brass lamp warmed in her palms. The flame inside it remained a fragile thing, but now it seemed to glow with different light, not a symbol of the price paid, but of the light they had chosen to reclaim. Eleanor placed her head on her mother's shoulder, and Daniel's hand found hers. Outside, life continued, messy and uncompromising. But within those four walls, something had mended in the way that slow stitches mend a torn cloth. Years later, when someone in the neighborhood told the story of the daughter who had been sold and then returned with her real parents, no one could agree exactly on the details, but everyone agreed on one truth: that love, even when bartered and bruised, could be reclaimed, not because it was easy, but because people chose finally to own their mistakes and build something better from them. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another heart-touching story. Before we begin, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Maybe New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. We'd love to know where our amazing viewers are joining us from.